It's okay. All right. Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this press conference with the Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territory, including East Jerusalem and Israel. We're delighted to have with us here today the chair of the commission, Ms. Navi Pillay, who will be joining us online from South Africa, and fellow commissioner, Mr. Chris Sidoti, who will be joining online from Australia. This morning here in New York, Ms. Pillay presented the findings of the Commission's latest report to the General Assembly, and now they're here to answer any questions that you may have. Ms. Pillay will start us off with opening remarks, followed by Mr. Sidoti, and then we'll open the floor to your questions. Ms. Pillay, please go ahead. She was there. We'll wait 1 second. Okay, she's back.
Hello, everybody. Sorry about that. You see why I'm stepping down? Too old to be handling all this technology. So may I say a few words first, Todd?
Yes, please go ahead.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. As Todd said, we just presented our report to the General Assembly's third committee, and this is our fourth mandated report looking into the events on and since 7th October 2023, and in addition to focusing on violations and developments related to land and housing, this report also contains a summary of the Commission's findings on the crime of genocide. Our analysis concluded that the State of Israel is responsible for the commission of 4 genocidal acts in Gaza with the specific intent to destroy Palestinians in Gaza. We also found that the Israeli President, Prime Minister, and former Defense Minister have incited the commission of genocide. These findings remain fully valid and continue to serve as a cornerstone for the Commission's ongoing efforts to ensure accountability. We found that Israeli officials have demonstrated a clear and consistent intent to establish permanent military control over Gaza and to change its demographic composition. We remain deeply concerned over this issue, as the changes already made to land and borders have not been meaningfully reversed, despite the recent ceasefire. And statements by Israeli officials make it clear that objections of ethnic cleansing and establishment of settlements in the Gaza Strip remain firmly in place. We remain equally concerned with statements and policy initiatives by Israeli politicians to annex de jure territories in the West Bank, including the preliminary approval in the Knesset of a bill applying Israeli law to the occupied West Bank. I would like to end my brief remarks by noting that this will be my last time addressing the press in my capacity as chair of this commission. It has been an immense honor to serve in this role, and I am deeply grateful to have contributed to the quest for justice for victims of violations in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territory. The Commission's work will continue with unwavering dedication, guided by its strong mandate and the commitment of those who will carry it forward. While challenges remain, there is hope for the future. Hope rooted in an overwhelming desire for justice and accountability and the strength of the international legal system, which I still very much believe in. So thank you for your attention and support.
Yes, please, Mr. Sidoti, please go ahead.
Thanks very much, Todd. As our chair has indicated, this is the last press conference, not only for her as chair of the commission, but also for the commission itself as presently constituted. During the 4 years that I've been a commissioner on this inquiry, I have endeavoured to avoid entering into discussion about UN personnel themselves and the criticisms of them in relation to the conflict in Israel and Palestine. The focus has been necessarily on the suffering of the people in that region, not on us. But as this is our last press conference, I want to make a couple of comments on this occasion about the attacks on UN personnel. The first relates to the Special Rapporteur, Francesca Albanese. Ms. Albanese has been subjected to attacks that no UN official should be subjected to, and indeed attacks that have been unparalleled in the past. We saw that again today at the Third Committee when the Israeli ambassador launched an absolutely outrageous attack on Ms. Albanese. He called her a witch, and the implication was obvious. She should be burnt at the stake. Those comments elicited some of the strongest comments in response that I've ever heard from the chair of a UN committee towards an ambassador. The chair of the Third Committee severely reprimanded the ambassador, amounting to a censure, and that was right and proper. But the attacks on Ms. Albanese continue, and indeed today, the comments from the Israeli ambassador were continued by the representative of Italy, her own country. And the attack on her has been accentuated by the United States in imposing sanctions on her. Those sanctions are unlawful under international law, and they are unlawful under United States domestic law. I don't know what actions have been undertaken by the Secretary General in private, but I have no doubt that the strongest possible action is being taken, precisely because the attacks on Ms. Albanese are not just an attack upon an individual, but upon the United Nations system itself. They represent fundamental violations of the Convention on Privileges and Immunity, and also of the host country agreement with the United States. They are simply unacceptable. I have also refrained over the last 3 years in responding to lies that have been constantly reiterated about my comments and were reiterated again today by the Israeli ambassador. These are lies from the Israeli government and its proxies. They claim that I have said that Jews are throwing around allegations of anti-Semitism like rice at a wedding. I did not say that, and I would not say that. Jewish people are not responsible for the criminal activities of the Netanyahu government and the Israeli military, just as Palestinian people are not responsible for the criminal activities of Hamas and Palestinian armed groups. They are incontrovertible facts. And yet Jewish people and Palestinian people suffer because of the criminal activities of those who have authority over them. Today, the ceasefire in Gaza is at risk. It has always been from the beginning, 2 weeks ago, a very precarious ceasefire, but it is now greatly at risk. I have no doubt that Hamas military leaders are questioning the wisdom of their political leaders in releasing the Israeli hostages. Now, the holding of the hostages and the treatment of the hostages was a war crime, and the Hamas leaders should be judged for that. But there were genuine fears that in releasing the hostages, there would be no further constraints on Netanyahu and his government. And those fears today are being realized. The criminal activities of both the Palestinian militant leadership and the Israeli political and military leadership must end. And they will only end when those who are responsible for the crimes are held to account. One of the failures of the 20-point proposal is that there is no provision for accountability. There can be no peace in Israel and Palestine without accountability. There can be no justice in Israel and Palestine without accountability. Thanks, Todd.
Thank you, Commissioners, for those opening remarks. And now we can open the floor to questions. If you could, as always, just identify yourself and the media outlet you work for. We'll start here.
Thank you both. Wish you the best of health, Madam Pillay. And we commend your courage, both of you and the inquiry team. My question is about prior to October 7. I mean, Israel and its proxies tried to dictate to the world that history started on October 7. Can you address that? I mean, what happened before October 7 that may led to some desperate acts by Palestinians after all those years of occupation, settlement activities, killing, invasion, incursions, bulldozing their houses? What the Palestinian can do in front of all these atrocities committed against them for 56 years before October 7. Thank you.
Chris, if you can respond to that.
Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. Abdul Hamid Sayam from the Arabic daily Al-Quds Al-Arabi. That is based in London. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, thanks, Navi. The events of October 7, 2023, of course, occurred in a context. The Secretary General at the time said that they did not occur in a vacuum. There were preceding events, the unlawful occupation of the Palestinian territories, the unlawful settlements in the Palestinian territories, the siege of Gaza, which at that stage had been going on for 17, 18 years. And so there is a context for what happened. Now, the context can explain, but it cannot justify. My mother, 20 years dead, used to say to me and my brothers when we were children, 2 wrongs don't make a right. The unlawfulness of the Israeli occupation did not justify the Hamas war crimes on the 7th of October. And those war crimes do not justify the Israeli military's actions since then. The simple fact is that on the 7th of October, the Hamas and other Palestinian militants committed war crimes. Our commission said that in its report to the Human Rights Council in June last year. And the fact is that since then, the Israeli authorities, civil and military, have been responsible for the commission of war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide in Gaza, and war crimes and crimes against humanity on the West Bank. There is no justification for these criminal activities. They are certainly the context before the 7th of October and on the 7th of October, but 2 wrongs don't make a right, as my mother said.
Well, let me add to what your mother said, Chris. There is an absolute prohibition against genocide. So you cannot say, I committed genocide because as part of our defense against Hamas. Israel has given 3 reasons. 1, military necessity, and specifically for self-defense, to beat Hamas and to rescue the hostages. Those were the reasons, they said, on why they attacked on the 7th of October, immediately after the Hamas attack. So if you have those intentions of defending yourself or going after Hamas, you cannot commit genocide. This commission has solely relied on the law. We didn't draw that convention. And similarly with Francisca, with whom we work very closely in cooperation. She's freer to make her statements because of her extensive experience. I stick to international law, so does Chris. So you see how clear it is. They can never plead as a defense that they had to engage in genocide because they had to defend themselves. So that's one aspect I want to bring up. The other is, when we started, we laid all our plans on what we're going to do. We had a 2-year plan. And so we started immediately in tracking the history. Even I learned so much that history is just repeating itself again and again in Gaza. All this was done in 1935, for instance. We have all that researched, written, ready to release, but we were overtaken by events, crisis after crisis. So we had to leave the historical part aside and address the 7th of October. We even picked the dates from 7th of October, a 2-year period ongoing now, as the period in which we focused on whether there's been genocide. It's a 2-year investigation by us. It took us very long because we investigated and verified every piece of evidence. It's a very serious crime, and we want to make sure that we've gathered enough evidence. And that's why we are 2 years behind. And this is why you ask us about the historical conflict that's been going on and repeating itself. Yes, we have the information. We're going to come out with it in our reports. Well, I hope the new team will. Just a little word on why we stepped down. This commission didn't have a cutoff date like other commissions. Every 2 years or 4 years, the council has the opportunity to appoint new commissioners. But this one was permanent. And I had indicated when I started that I will have to leave because of age and ill health. And I indicated each time 2 years to 4 years. So it went on almost to the 5th year. So it's not a sensational reason. There's nothing sinister about it. There's a lot of speculation on why we stepped aside. No, this is my reason. And I don't mind telling you my age. When you reach a certain age level, you don't mind shouting it out. So I'm 84, and the doctors have advised me that I shouldn't be traveling because of a blood disorder. So that's all. And Chris and Miloon took the decision of also stepping down after I talked with the president of the council. And so it's my hope, because Chris has indicated his availability, it's my hope that when the new commissioners are appointed, that Chris will be reappointed and that he will chair the commission. So nobody's abandoning the project. You're going to get the same quality reports that you have so far. So sorry to chat a bit, but this business of why we resign just is taken on, even to this morning, has taken on sinister connotations. I mean, none of you were interested in that. You didn't ask me. I just took the opportunity to clarify that. Be ready for your further questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Me.
Yes, please.
Ms. Pillay, Evelyn Leopold, Dag Hammarskjöld Fund for Journalists. We have met over the years.
Of course.
And it's very good to see you again. And I wonder, was October 7th a game changer? It allowed little, it produced a little friendly rape on the part of Hamas and its allies, and it allowed Israel to say, aha, look at them, and I'm going to bomb them. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you. That's why I started saying we had planned our work. We wanted to bring out the entire history, so the entire context is clear. As I said, I also learned so much about the role of governments even at that stage when they cut up Palestine, and when the resolution was adopted by the Security Council. We would have begun with that as a natural beginning. October 7, 2023 took us by shock. But nevertheless, within 3 days, we issued a public statement, the first body in the United Nations to do so, condemning the Hamas attack, asking for the release of the hostages immediately, and a cessation of hostilities. We asked for 3 things on October 10th. And that's our position still on the October 7th attack. In this particular report, we're dealing with the counterattack, shall I say, the retaliation by Israel. That's what we're focusing on here, because we have, condemned those Hamas attacks again and again. And if need be, we will continue our investigations there. We actually are still continuing our investigation, and we may well come up with further reports, because that's our job, to report to you on what we see as atrocities and violations. October 7th turned out to be a game changer because of the level of violence that was inflicted in return, the level of support that Israel received, which enabled it to kill so many people with all these sophisticated weapons. You know that we were given an additional mandate by the Human Rights Council. We were given 2 additional mandates. One was to investigate the settler violence and identify the individual perpetrators, and the other was to investigate the transfer of military equipment from other states to Israel. And this mandates resolutions were passed 2 years ago by the Human Rights Council, but we were completely unable to even begin preparing those reports because we didn't get the funding. I don't know, Chris, if you want to add something to this question about the October 7th, change our plans too.
No, I think you've responded well, Navi.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, and it's really good seeing you again. We spent time together in our youth.
We still are. Thank you, Evelyn.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to the next question. If you could please go ahead in the back.
Thank you, Stefano Vaccara, La Voce di New York, Ital Press. Do you have any regrets in these 4 years, I believe? Something that you did, some mistake you did, if you did, something that you could advise the next commission to not do it, and what there is that you actually wanted to do it, and you think it was important, and you were not able, and why you were not able.
Yeah, so that brings me back to my introductory remarks just now, that our planned work was to begin with the history and the background and the context. We haven't done that. To me, it's unfortunate, because in the Rwanda tribunal, that's how we started writing the first judgment. We thought we have to create a historical record of what happened. And then all the other trial courts after us repeated that history, because it became very important to understand the context in which these crimes were committed, and it brings out the motivations, intent, and so on. Otherwise, we have received more compliments than criticism of our report, especially the genocide report and conclusions, because it's just packed with facts. We're not just speculating. So I don't want to be too modest, but people have described it as a work of quality. Otherwise, I would say to you, yes, we made a couple of mistakes. We didn't.
Okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. My name is Ephraim Kosaifi with Arab News Daily. I have a question for both commissioners. One for Mr. Sidoti. You mentioned in your opening remarks that you have no doubt that the strongest possible action is being taken here at the UN to address the attacks against Special Rapporteur Albanese. I was wondering, what exactly did you mean by that, and what are your expectations for what the Secretary General should be doing to address these attacks on the Special Rapporteurs? And for Commissioner Pillay, for a general question, because your report has had an extensive media coverage, for people who say that international law has died in Gaza, what would be your response to those people?
Go ahead, Chris.
Well, maybe I go first since I had the first question. I don't have any information. As I indicated, things have been going on behind the scenes. And it's precisely because of the seriousness of the attack on the United Nations itself, and indeed the operations of the United Nations at its New York headquarters, that I have no doubt that there are very serious actions being taken in response. But what they may be and how they may be proceeding is something that I don't have knowledge of. This is a matter for the Secretary General. I'm just a minor minion operating from Australia. So I can't answer the rest of that.
Well, the question to me was, has international law abandoned or left the Palestinians? Let me begin by saying that during my retirement, when I stepped down as High Commissioner for Human Rights and had these gap years, I was invited by the Dean of the Law School of Al-Quds University, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, and spent a week with the students at the university. It's very interesting what you learn from students. They all knew about international law. You don't have to teach them that. They knew what they are entitled to. So their rights under international law for self-determination is what they clearly understood. So Palestinians know all about international law, but Israel, in collaboration with the states, mainly from the West, has clearly abandoned the implementation of international law in relation to the Palestinians. And that is what we have to ask states again and again. Why have you not pursued both the solutions that the Security Council came up with in 1948? Why create one state and not the other? So international law guarantees their right to self-determination, and the International Court of Justice very clearly said that in their advisory opinion. That's a very important advisory opinion. And I fully expect that all the member states of the UN will get together to implement that, because this is the court for the states. It's not for you and I, it's for states. And they asked the court to give us an opinion on these issues. So personally, as a judge dedicated to international law, for me, that's a huge disappointment that states don't seem to take their responsibilities seriously. The ICJ also indicated that he'd found plausible reasons or indications that genocide might occur there. Now, that is an alert to member states, because if you look at the Genocide Convention, it's not a choice that the states have. It's a legal obligation to prevent genocide, to protect against it, to prevent the commission of genocide, whether the genocide is occurring in your country or not. So it's a erga omnes obligation on every state. But none of them had taken that up. Over 2 years, when the Palestinians were being pummeled to death and denied humanitarian aid, medicines, water, food, it became an unbelievable situation for them. And why October 7th and for the next 2 years is so shocking is because the world watched and did nothing about it. And this is why we address the issue of genocide so carefully. because of the peremptory obligation on the part of every state to now get involved to prevent it. That was my question. Chris, you want to add to it?
No.
It's all right.
Okay. Do we have any more questions from the room? Anyone? You had a follow-up? Okay,
If you
please
don't
go
mind.
ahead.
Yeah, I have two questions, one for Chris and one for Navi. Regarding the peace plan introduced by Trump, it's supposed to talk about immediate, complete ceasefire and allowing humanitarian aid to enter with an average of 600 trucks a day and to release the hostages. Yes. Hamas committed itself. They released all the live hostages, the bodies of those deceased. It's not easy to find them, as you know. But Israel did not stop killing Palestinians in Gaza any single day. It's over 100 Palestinians were killed in the last 3 weeks, about 20 days, since October 10, I think. So who is in violation of the ceasefire? And related to that, I mean, the Trump plans also doesn't talk about future for Palestinians, except bright future for Palestinian and Israelis. They didn't talk about state, Palestinian state. They didn't talk about connecting Gaza with the West Bank. It didn't talk about settlement. Didn't talk about self-determination for the Palestinians. So it's just, you feel that this plan was made just to get the hostages out and then allow Israel to continue its atrocities, which they are doing. As you know, you heard the statement from the Prime Minister of Israel just a few hours ago. And my second question to Ms. Pillay about apartheid. You lived in a country that fought apartheid and won. Is there any country in the world that been asked the local occupied people to protect their occupier? And if they don't, then it's self-defense. The Israeli has the right to self-defense. But the occupied don't have that right to defend themselves. And if you have a country now which has roads for the settlers and different road for Palestinians, different plate number for Israelis and different plate number for Palestinians, different laws for Palestinian and other laws for the Israelis. And even the definition of a child is different. For an Israeli child is 18, for a Palestinian child is 16. And they have also military courts for children in Palestine. Isn't that clear case of apartheid being practiced in Israel now? Thank you.
This question was for you, Chris.
Well, first one for me. Earlier, I referred to the peace proposal. I didn't refer to it as a peace plan because it's not a plan, it's a proposal. And of the 20 points in the proposal, only 3 have been agreed between the combatants. And those 3 were the release of hostages, living and dead, and in return, the release of something like 1,750 Palestinian prisoners and detainees. Secondly, a complete ceasefire in Gaza itself. And third, the resumption of humanitarian aid at least the level of the aid that was provided during the course of the earlier ceasefire this year, so 600 trucks a day. Now, 600 trucks is less than the bare minimum, but even so, it is around 2 or 3 times the number of trucks that are actually entering Gaza since the ceasefire began. I can't answer the question who is violating the ceasefire. We haven't done the investigation on that. But quite clearly, the hostages have been released, apart from 12 bodies that are still being sought. The Palestinian prisoners and detainees have been released, but humanitarian aid has not been resumed at the levels that were agreed, and there is not a complete ceasefire taking place. This peace proposal was always precarious. Right from the start, in spite of all the hoopla, it was always precarious. And it seems today, with fighting taking place in Rafah and Israeli bombing having resumed in the Rafah area, it is more precarious than ever. It is absolutely essential that a full, comprehensive ceasefire be implemented as a matter of urgency. It is absolutely essential that humanitarian aid be restored at least the level that was agreed. And in fact, more than that, because the International Court of Justice said last week that humanitarian assistance must be at a level to sustain life for Palestinian people. And even the 600 trucks a day is not sufficient for that. So these are matters that are absolutely essential. And then there must be serious negotiations between the parties, not between foreign states, but between the parties, the Israelis and the Palestinians, about the rest of the proposal and other matters that need to be resolved in securing true peace and true justice. And that must extend to all Palestine, not just to Gaza. So we are still a long way away from even seeing an effective ceasefire and effective delivery of humanitarian aid in Gaza. 2 of the 3 items that were agreed. And we are even further away from seeing any serious negotiations taken place. I would note in finishing, I would note that we are not much different at this point from the ceasefire that was agreed at the beginning of the year. It was agreed that these first steps take place, and then it was decided there would be a negotiated second phase. But the ceasefire was violated by the Israeli authorities before that second phase even began. I fear that we are at the same point now as we were in March this year in relation to the first ceasefire.
Well, the question to me addressed apartheid, and it's true. I never thought that things will change in my country, South Africa, in my lifetime. That's how hopeless the situation, and that's how humiliating it was for all of us who lived there and were discriminated just because of our skin color. Apartheid was racism was institutionalized in the laws of South Africa. Now, I know that there's been lots of anxiety for the Commission to address the crime of apartheid because it's written in the Rome Statute that it's a crime now. And there were lots of discussions going on, especially here in South Africa. We engaged with people. We are aware that Amnesty International came up with its report on the crime of apartheid being committed by Israel. We had extensive discussions, and we took the view that we have to go for the overarching crime, which is much more serious. Apartheid is one of the crimes that fits under genocide. So genocide to us was much more significant, but we didn't look for the label or decide ahead that, oh no, this is what we're going to do. No, we followed the evidence very carefully. And as we gathered evidence of particular episodes, we made that public. We did that in 7 reports. And now for the genocide report, we brought all that evidence forward. That's why it's driven by the evidence on the ground and what people told us. The Commission may well examine apartheid as a crime, as you said, because of the discrimination involved in the different systems of laws and taking away of their land, dispossession. This is what we highlighted in the report we delivered today before the third committee. So you have said much in your question to us that are surely indicators of the crime of apartheid. And I hope you understand why we felt we had to go for the larger picture and always return to apartheid when we've gathered all the evidence we need to address that. It's now left to the new panel, of course. But before leaving, I would say yes. Everybody who sees this wall going round and round, different roads for Israelis to use and to which the Palestinians do not have access. This is what we experience, and the whites who practice apartheid believe that that's for life. That is never going to change. They a magistrate told President Mandela in his earlier case, when Mandela refused to plead in that courtroom because he said, this is a white man's court, I don't expect any justice. And the magistrate said to him, yes, well, it is a white man's court, and that's that. Meaning you can't change that, it's written in stone. But you can change things that are violations of the law. So thank you for the question on apartheid. We often get that question, and I think we owe you an explanation of why we didn't do it over the past 4 years, but the new panel will probably look into it further. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any more questions from the room or online? Anybody? Okay, one in the back. Okay, please, go ahead.
Hi, thanks very much. I'm sorry I had to leave for a brief part of the briefing, but did you, this is Dulcie from Pass Blue, did you say how long a new commission would take to be constituted or reconstituted? Is there a time frame at all? And what about these budget problems? Will it get in the way of a new commission being created? Thank you.
Dulcie, you're a real journalist. Now going into what the UN hasn't made public as yet on the appointment and when. But remember that our letters of resignation come into effect on 3rd November. And I would argue as a lawyer that they have to set up this new panel before the 3rd of November. So I would say it's imminent. So thank you for asking. There's a process they will have to follow. They headhunt or they call for nominations. The High Commissioner for Human Rights draws up a short list and gives it to the president. The president consults his bureau and maybe others. I'm merely blurting all this out because I was High Commissioner for Human Rights. I know the process from that end. And then I give you this date, 3rd November. We were hoping that something would have happened by now. But it seems the president has to appoint commissioners on several other panels as well. But why don't you raise the question with them? And we're very keen on his answer as well.
You mean asking the High Commissioner for Human Rights?
Ask the president of the
Human Rights Council. Okay, thanks. And
Yes.
Did you say in your briefing what you're going to do with your free time?
When I retire, I'm the president of the International Commission Against the Death Penalty. It's a very concerning issue. There was an execution in the States recently. Once again, it was a very cruel way. So I have enough issues to occupy me. I've agreed to sit on a People's Tribunal here in South Africa on pesticides because big business wants those poisonous pesticides to come in. They said if it doesn't, it will affect the economics. But meanwhile, children have died eating food grown in that soil. There are so many issues for people concerned about human rights. And I get approached all the time. So hopefully, Dulcie, I will be working in my own country more than traveling outside. And I still serve as a judge ad hoc in the International Court of Justice in the matter brought by the Gambia against Myanmar. I have to finish that.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you for your presence.
We want to see you again. Okay.
It's a bit difficult to travel to where you are right now with visas and other problems.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. If there are not any more, that would bring us to the end of this press conference. I'd just like to thank the commissioners and Ms. Pillay in particular. Thank you for all you've done for the UN. Thank you for all you've done for the Commission, and you will be missed. So, thank you.
Thanks, Doctor.